everyone. Welcome back to the Rage Room. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Skylar Neese. I'm your host Amanda, and this is my co-host Karen.
Hey guys!
So we're going to dive right into this case. We're going to talk about Skylar Annette Neese. She was born to Mary and Dave Neese on February 10th, 1996. She grew up living in Star City, which is a small town outside of Morgantown, which is a big coal miner area in West Virginia. And Skylar was a very bright and bubbly girl. She had a smile that would light up the room. People described her as very warm and welcoming, and she was also a straight-A student with a GPA of 4.0.
Okay.
Skylar had a best friend growing up, and her name was Morgan Lawrence. They did everything together. Skylar and Morgan talked about what they wanted to be when they got older, and Morgan wanted to be a meteorologist, and Skylar planned on becoming a criminal lawyer. The girls' parents were also friends, so it kind of just became this family unit. They always did everything together. The girls had talked about being in each other's weddings, and they did make a pact that they would be in each other's weddings because they were basically sisters. But as the girls got older, they went into high school, and things started to drift. So childhood, young friends kind of start drifting off. When you get into high school, you start kind of branching out a little bit and meeting new people.
We've all had that experience with our best friends, and you grow up with them, and then you get in high school, and, you know, they start having other relationships, you start having other relationships, and it's pretty common and normal for people to drift apart.
Yeah, people just kind of expand, and sometimes things just kind of fall by the wayside, or they just kind of grow apart. And that's what happened in this case. And Skylar also had another friend. Her name was Sheila Eddy, and she met her when she was 8. So they were still pretty close, and then when she went into high school, Skylar and Sheila started to get a lot closer, and, you know, her and Morgan really didn't talk as much anymore. And then Skylar and Sheila became friends with a girl named Rachel Schoaf. So with Rachel, Sheila, and Skylar, they kind of became the Three Musketeers. Classmates said you never saw one without the other two. They called themselves the Three Musketeers, were always together, always doing things. And Sheila, one of the girls out of the three, she was more rebellious than the other two. She hung out with what you would call a rough crowd or a much older crowd. So she would hang out with like 22, 23-year-olds, and she's 15, 16.
I basically did the same thing. I remember being 14 years old, and I was hanging out more with seniors, myself being a freshman. You know, I found just hanging out with seniors was a lot more fun, or you get into mischief.
And same, I hung out with a lot of older people as well. These people were not who you'd want to be hanging out with. They were really bad influences. Classmates said that Sheila became a really bad influence on Rachel and Skylar. We know that the girls are inseparable, but as time went on, Skylar kind of shifted her personality a little bit. The once like really bubbly, light up the room girl has now turned into this more rebellious, more of like a mean girl because of this trio, right? So now it's more of like Regina George clique, but not in the popularity sense, but just as the mean girl. So as time passes, Rachel and Sheila come getting really close out of the three. So we have Skylar, Sheila, and Rachel, and now Rachel and Sheila are getting really close. So the three, when they were doing everything together, now they're kind of like, we're gonna go hang out and leave Skylar out a little bit, and they started leaving her out of a lot of things. There were rumors that actually Rachel and Sheila were in a relationship, but they both had boyfriends, so there was nothing that they could do to really prove it.
So Skylar's probably feeling pretty rejected about this time, and we all know that that's one of the worst of our human emotions, the feeling of rejection. So.
It is, yeah. And Skylar started feeling really hurt and left out, and at this time, this is when social media came out, and so everybody's posting about, you know, what time they get up, what time they eat, how they feel, question mark, all of these smoke screen posts that people do on Facebook.
Right.
And this really was a big sense of Twitter for these girls. So they would just post everything that they were doing all the time. The tension began to grow, and in July of 2012, the tension began to grow a lot with Skylar as she began posting things on Twitter. So at this point, we know that this once trio is now kind of shifted. Sheila and Rachel are now hanging out more. They're intentionally not like spending any time with Skylar, and Skylar's getting angry and hurt. So to kind of bide her time, she ends up getting a job at a local Wendy's, you know, just through the summer, keep her busy, not as sad. And on July 3rd, one of her posts said, "People can be mean for absolutely no reason. Then on July 4th, Skylar found out that Sheila and Rachel were hanging out and intentionally did not invite Skylar.
Okay.
Now switched from the group. These two are really becoming tight. So once she finds out that they intentionally didn't invite her, she posts on July 4th on Twitter, "It really doesn't take much to piss me off." Then another post, "Sick of being at home. Thanks, friends. Love hanging out with you all too." Then she posts again on July 4th, "Stress will be the death of me." Then on July 5th, she posts again, "You doing shit like that is why I will never," in bold capital letters, "completely trust you." Skylar at this point is hurt. She's starting to lash out. She's angry. She thought they were all friends, and suddenly she's feeling really left out of the group. Skylar was loyal to her friends, but she couldn't understand why this was happening to her and why they would lie and intentionally hurt her. And I have experienced this as well. Being younger and having friends of threes, it seems to never really work out. There's always, especially with females, it's like we get this jealousy or whatever you want to call it. But I remember distinctly being a young child and the two other friends, there was always this tension. Like, I felt bad if I had to just hang out with this person because this person felt out. Like, we could never do things together.
Yeah, it's a strange dynamic, just depending on, the personalities and their behavior and all. There seems to be, a dissociation, as people get older. They cling to maybe one other person and then the others go by the wayside. And another thing, too, with the whole Facebook thing and the posting. We are all absolutely guilty of this. Facebook has actually become like a invisible therapist for all of us. Emotions or feelings that you wouldn't necessarily talk to someone about, but you got to get those emotions or feelings out. You're hurt or you're angry about something, whether it's political or social-wise as far as friends. We tend to say things on Facebook just to kind of get it off of our chest. Mm-hmm. And we do it in a way that we don't want to intentionally upset someone. It's not trying to be passive aggressive, but then so many things can be interpreted into the written word. Almost like it's created, a space to where people start getting their feelings hurt, getting upset with one another over a post that had nothing to do with them. It was just someone venting some feelings that they were having.
Right, but I'm also going to play devil's advocate. And how many people do we see out there that post smokescreen statements to grab attention or to create some kind of drama because nothing else is going on in life? They're pissed off or mad at this person, and so they throw it out on Facebook instead of intentionally going to that person or confronting that person or situation that they're upset about, and it creates this whole other realm of drama. One of the reasons why I'm not on Facebook very much, this happened to be on Twitter, and I've never been on Twitter. I have an account, but Twitter's just not my thing. And I have noticed, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, that social media has become this cesspool of drama and people posting whatever they want with no repercussions and just being able to get, what you said, a therapist kind of thing. But I think that people mean more than that to it as well. They intentionally post those things. These posts are intentional. She knows that her friends are going to see them.
Right.
She knows that she's talking to her friends when she says, "This is why I will never completely trust you." And I'm assuming that she's talking about either Sheila or Rachel. But it's an intentional post. It's an intentional thing that you throw out there for somebody to see. And I think that everybody is guilty of this, even myself.
Right. We've lost the art of just communicating face-to-face with one another.
Mm-hmm, we really have. Also on July 5th, Skylar finishes her shift up at Wendy's. And she comes home. She's hurt, but she's trying to move past it. And she decides to go to bed early. She hugs her mom and her dad, puts herself to bed. And on the next day, Skylar's dad comes home from his job at Walmart on his lunch to have lunch with Skylar at the apartment. And when he gets there, he notices that the bedroom door is shut. He thought maybe she shut it because she was changing her clothes or just wanted privacy. But when he knocked, there was no answer. And so he got a little suspicious. So he went around the apartment to look in the window to make sure everything was okay. And that's where he sees a bench outside the window, and the window screen is gone.
Oh, maybe thinking she might have snuck out, possibly?
Yeah, and if you have a higher window and you need a bench, you're going to need something to step down on or get back into. So he's not really sure what exactly is going on. He calls Skylar's phone multiple times with no answer. He calls her friends, and he also calls Sheila, her friend. And she says she has no idea where she had been and hadn't seen her. Dave, Skylar's dad, then calls his wife Mary and fills her in. Mary's concerned, however, Skylar has snuck out with her friends before and they were caught because they stayed out past the town's curfew, and so guess what? They got busted. And so she thought, well, maybe this was the same situation, or she was just out, but she didn't want to panic. She was concerned, but didn't want to panic. She told Dave, Skylar's due at work at 4 o'clock. We'll call about 10 minutes after her work, make sure she gets clocked in, and then check on her. However, 4 o'clock rolls by, and the Neeses don't get a chance to call Skylar's work because they call them first, saying that she's not showing up for work. So Skylar's nowhere to be found. Friends don't know where she's at. Work doesn't know where she's at. Her parents don't know where she's at. And another few minutes later, another big surprise. Sheila calls the Neeses and says, I have to tell you the truth. We snuck out last night. She states that Rachel and Sheila picked up Skylar around 11 o'clock at night, dropped her off right before midnight. And she said that Skylar specifically said, drop me off at the end of the street so they don't hear me sneaking back into the house.
I am kind of seeing where this is going.
Yeah. So Mary, Skylar's mom, believes Sheila. After all, they've done it before, but they were caught. Then Mary remembers that the apartment complex had recently put up cameras. And so she goes over to the landlord, explains the situation. They're like, come back to my office, let's check out the cameras. They see a car pull up at 12:30. Now remember, they said 11, right? They see a car pull up at 12:30, and Skylar is seen in a grainy video walking out of the driveway and getting into this car at 12:35. And then they drive off. Now, at first, Mary is thinking that her child has been abducted because she thinks she's been dropped off before midnight, okay? So she's been dropped off before midnight. She's walked home. She thinks that Skylar has gone home. A car pulls up, Skylar walks, and she's been abducted. Because the timeline doesn't match up, right? They're saying she dropped her off before midnight. This car is seen driving off with Skylar at 12:35. They call the police and report her missing. However, law enforcement will not activate an Amber Alert if the child is thought to be a runaway. And because she was seen walking to the car at her own will,
Not being forced into
exactly.
just getting in on her own accord. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they're not activating the Amber Alert. 2 days pass, there's no sight of Skylar. By this time, the public has learned of Skylar's missing through the radio, television, and internet coverage. And as weeks passed, police had heard rumors that Skylar had snuck out, gone to a party, overdosed on heroin, and died. And that people just freaked out and disposed of her body. However, police do recognize this as a rumor and don't believe that it's actually factual. These are just rumors that are coming in back and forth. Because across at another town, there was a bank robbery. And so there for a minute, there were rumors that Skylar had gone out with these bank robbers and had a party and overdosed at this party house, and she died, and they just disposed of her body.
So this is a small town that they're from, so in small towns, this is what happens.
Word gets around, yeah.
All kinds of rumors, yes.
Yes. So Jessica Colbank is a detective working on this case, and she states that when she talked to Sheila, her demeanor seemed suspicious. When she went to talk to her, Sheila was a complete blank on emotions. Like nothing was there, just ice cold. And when Jessica Colbank talks to Rachel, she was the opposite. She was very nervous. When she spoke, she was, fidgety, and not to mention that their stories were verbatim.
Too close.
Too close. And the detective says that no stories are verbatim unless they've been rehearsed.
Exactly.
Right. So this detective says that everything in her gut says that Sheila was acting wrong and Rachel is scared to death. After the investigation increases speed, they had put together that the car that Skylar gets into is in fact Sheila's car. This was the first lie that they had cracked in the case. Rachel and Sheila had a secret. They also busted the girls in lies because their cell phones pinged to a tower over an hour away outside of Blacksville.
So it's funny because, people don't realize you can turn your location services off on your phone, but those cell phone towers, they can locate you wherever, whenever.
Or at least within a few mile radius of that tower.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is when Sheila decides to change her story. She tells them that yes, they went to Blacksville and just hung out, And then they came back. This was the first major red flag because, as we see, anybody that changes their stories, you know, when you're sticking to a story like, hey, we went out, we came back in like 45 minutes, and now all of a sudden they're driving over an hour away.
Right.
Lied and said they didn't go there.
You just lost all credibility.
Exactly. And the parents learn of this story change as well. And so the parents, other family members, and friends start putting pressure on the girls. Here we go with the social media again. Mary, Skylar's mom, starts putting things on social media like, karma's gonna get you, just tell the truth, we know you're hiding something, like really zoning in on these girls, like trying to get them to talk. And friends and family are doing it as well. Classmates start talking about how Rachel becomes very agitated at school, and she was really pretty bubbly for the most part anyway, but very agitated, very withdrawn. Sheila is partying it up, posting on Twitter. I can't tell you, when I looked into their Twitter accounts and was reading the posts, like, to know this story and to see the things that they post was really gut-wrenching. So Sheila's out living it up. Rachel's starting to get more agitated. So Christmas comes and goes, and the nieces say that there was no joy, no celebration, as their little girl is still missing.
Right, of course.
Yeah, so they said they didn't even put up a Christmas tree. On December 28th, Rachel has a nervous breakdown. She was committed to a local psychiatric hospital after becoming violent to her parents and acting out. So this is 3 days after Christmas. We don't know a whole lot of teenagers or kids that are going to get super violent or agitated with their parents after Christmas. This is like the best time in a kid's life, right? They're happy, they've gotten presents, and there's all this magic in the air. So she's committed, and here is where she has no contact with Sheila whatsoever. When Rachel is discharged on January 3rd of 2013, Rachel goes to her attorney's office.
So why would she be committed and then as soon as she gets out, run to the attorney's office? Of course, my mind goes straight to major guilt feelings, that she's having. So, the whole breakdown thing, and then freaking out saying...
Not to mention she's a 16-year-old girl.
Exactly. And now she's like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Yeah, I better go see an attorney. So it's really looking like she's very guilty of something at this point.
Yeah. Yep, and we're about to find out. So not only does Rachel go to her lawyers, but she also goes to the police. Rachel then confesses that Sheila and her stabbed Skylar to death.
I think I saw that one coming.
They had been planning her murder for months while pretending to be Skylar's friend. These are 16-year-old girls.
Yeah.
This isn't some grown adult who's lived their life and like, yes, I'm going to be a killer now because I can't stand somebody. These are growing minds, growing bodies, young 16-year-old girls. At that point in your life, you're like, who's going to be my next boyfriend? What do I want to be when I grow up? And now they've murdered somebody.
Yeah, and it goes back to, I think, a lot of social media stuff. Children that have grown up in a world of social media as opposed to some of us who did not grow up that way. Everything is out in the world, and they never grasp, like I say, the art of just conversation, how to handle their emotions, how to handle certain situations.
Or talk it out, even.
Yeah, but they've been conditioned, I think, kids today. They've been very conditioned, by everything that they do see out there. And they've become very desensitized. And human life, has no value. Or at least not the value that it had in the minds of people maybe from my generation or your generation. I'm not saying, of course, that all kids today or millennials or anything are like that whatsoever. I'm just saying that
there's a change.
There has been a drastic change in the way that human beings now handle their emotions, their frustrations. They've just become very uncomfortable with face-to-face conversations.
So yeah, you're exactly right that we have conditioned these kids not to be able to handle life in real life. We only have conditioned them to handle life through social media, their persona, all of those things. And this is unfortunately a really tragic case where we're going to see the ultimate price is paid for miscommunication, smoke screening, and social media. Rachel goes on to tell them that Sheila supplied the knives from her kitchen, and it was also Sheila's car. After Rachel's confession, Rachel then agreed to lead police to the murder site. So they drive out over an hour out towards Blacksville, and they arrive, and all they find are scattered remains and bones that have been picked apart by animals.
Yeah.
They ask Rachel what was the plan. Rachel says that they drove out there, they pulled off to a place so that they could just sit and talk and hang out. When Skylar got up to go to the car, Sheila says to Rachel, "We go on 3." And Sheila counted 1, 2, 3. And they began stabbing Skylar. And the only thing that Skylar said during all of this was why.
Wow.
Police work with Rachel. They put a wire on her, and she was to wear the wire over to Sheila's house so that they could try to set up a sting to get them to talk about it. However, no information comes from the wire. They don't talk about it. They're just two teenage girls hanging out like nothing ever happened. And the only thing that the girls did do was post on social media how excited they were to see each other again. And because of that post on social media, I'm going to go through some of Sheila's other posts while all of this is happening. So this timeline is while the current investigation is going on with Skylar missing. Okay, police have information. On March 13th, 2013, the news is released about finding Skylar's remains. Sheila posts, "Rest easy, Skylar. You'll always be my best friend. I'll miss you more than you could ever know."
Wow.
Then there's
How twisted is that?
it gets worse. And then another post that says it's the worst day of her life, etc.
Of course. Yeah. And what they're doing with that is they're thinking to themselves, well, if we keep posting,
If I look this way,
how devastated we are that the police won't look at us for the cause of her death.
yeah. However, then on April 1st, right? So that was in March. Then on April 1st, 2013, Sheila posts again. Get this, right? She posts, "We really did go on 3!" exclamation point.
Oh, so I'm just going to go ahead and just, wow. It's like, okay, I'm not
Like
guilty, I'm
boasting.
guilty, I'm not guilty, I'm guilty.
They obtain a warrant for Sheila's car in hopes to get DNA from it in the backseat from Skylar, and they do just that. Sheila and Rachel are now backed into a corner. Rachel turns herself into authorities at Magnolia County on May 1st, 2013, and pled guilty to second-degree murder. Officer Gaskins then races across town. So now they've got one, right? The DNA's come back in the car from Sheila's car. It's a match. They have a full confession. The other one's pled guilty. He races across the town and charges Sheila with first-degree murder in the parking lot of a local Cracker Barrel where her and her mother were having lunch.
Wow.
And they talk about the arrest that Sheila was beginning to ask, "Mom, is everything going to be okay? Am I going to be okay?" And her mom just says, "I don't know, Sheila."
Oh, wow. Can you imagine being a parent and then knowing that your child had something to do with the death of one of their supposed
Not just the death, the murder, like planned murder, not just death.
Right.
However, can you also imagine being a customer at Cracker Barrel and seeing a 16-year-old be arrested for first-degree murder?
Right.
Sheila was charged and she pled guilty to first-degree murder. Throughout the trial, it was talked about that Sheila and Rachel were in a sexual relationship and that Skylar had planned to out them.
So is that true?
We don't know. We don't know it to be factual. But it was one of the reasons that they said, we had to just quiet her down. We didn't want anybody to know they had boyfriends. Then they asked Rachel why, and Rachel says, "I just wanted to get it done before church camp."
What? Mm-hmm. Church camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole time that Skylar's gone missing, Sheila's involved with the parents. She's gone to their house, trying to, give them some kind of condolences. It's going to be okay. I miss Skylar. I love her so much. She goes out and is fully helping post posters and all of this stuff. And Rachel's "I just wanted to get it done before church camp."
So has it been established that Rachel and Sheila were in fact involved more romantically sexual relationship with one another?
No.
That's not even been proven or established?
It's not been proven or established, no. But it was just talked about.
A speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Sheila pled guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison and is eligible for parole in 15 years.
And once again,
right,
that goes against my grain so much, that you can murder another human being, but you know what? It's okay. If you spend 15 years in prison, then maybe we'll let you out.
Mm-hmm. Rachel was sentenced to 30 years in prison. She pled guilty to second degree and is eligible for parole in 10 years. During trial, Rachel apologized to Mary and Dave, the parents of Skylar, and said, I don't know if there's a proper way to deliver this apology, and there are no words to describe the guilt and remorse I feel for each day that I have done. I became scared and caught up in something and didn't know what to do. I never realized the gravity of my actions or how many people I have hurt.
Okay. I guess I try to wrap my mind around this, and I'm trying to think as a 16-year-old, and I understand peer pressure is a big thing, and I understand that you yourself want to be accepted, and you've got this best friend, you possibly even have other feelings for that friend, and then, they talk to you about actually taking a knife and plunging that knife into the flesh of another human being that that has really not done anything more to you than just some maybe sarcastic post on Facebook. There has to be at some point, somewhere in that person's mind, that this isn't right, this is completely wrong, but they continue to go through with it anyway out of some sort of fear. Fear that that person, if I don't do this, they won't like me. My mind is actually just can't wrap around the fact that at some point in time that she didn't say no.
Right.
I'm not going to do this. This is wrong, and I'm not going to be a part of it. It's something I'll never understand, I guess.
I would believe somebody getting caught up in it had they not done the stabbing themselves. Like, maybe, yes, they had planned on it, but then they actually didn't stab because they got scared. I would believe, okay, yeah, you were scared and things changed, but it still doesn't make sense to me why a teenager would try to use, I just got caught up in something. If you got caught up in something, I would see that with drugs. I would see that with sneaking out. I don't see that with murdering somebody. You don't just get caught up in murdering somebody. Dave makes a statement, that's Skylar's dad, and saying that these girls are monsters and they don't deserve forgiveness. That these girls had ruined him and his wife's life and threw their daughter out like a piece of trash.
Well, and basically that's exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm. They just left her out to be...
And that's what I'm saying. It's one thing to actually commit murder, cause the death of another human being, but it says even more to the evil of someone's mind that they take the body and just leave it for animals or whatever. Just, it's like, say, throwing it away like trash.
Exactly. Rachel is currently incarcerated at Northern Regional Juvenile Detention Center in Wheeling, West Virginia, and Sheila is in Lakin County Correctional.
Wow.
So yeah, one's going to be out in 15 years, one's going to be out in 10. So they are both being detained, and Skylar's parents have made a memorial for Skylar at the place that she was murdered. So they have like a nice garden that they go to. They say it's very peaceful now. And they also helped pass Skylar's Law, which is a law that forces authorities to activate an Amber Alert even if there's suspicion that the child is a runaway.
That's where this whole thing came from. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep, so now there's a law, Skylar's Law, that even if a child is run away from home, they have to activate an Amber Alert.
Not meaning that the Amber Alert actually came from this case, but just the fact that they would activate it sooner. Okay.
Yeah, an Amber Alert didn't come from this case.
Right.
But now that it has to be activated.
Okay. So this is a good thing, actually, because, as soon as a child is reported missing, they send out that Amber Alert, then, everyone can be looking for them.
Very true. Yeah, and I also think that this should be a big eye-opener for our children and what the things that they get involved in. People often think that a 16-year-old is starting to make their way in the world and starting to make these decisions, and so they stop supervising. And Mary, Skylar's mom, talks about, the only thing I really regret is not knowing these other girls. I should have seen more. They were around, but I didn't know them. They hid something. I should have known more about these girls. But also, she feels that I could have known more. I could have known these girls better.
Well, we all understand that with society and the way that it is, and both parents have to work, there's a lot of latchkey kids. We can't keep our eyes on our kids 24/7.
Right.
We can only hope that what we teach them, they end up becoming very responsible, caring adults. However, it is also important, yes, to know who your children are hanging out with. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of us that are probably very lucky. We may have gotten into some sort of situation that could have actually potentially got us very hurt or even killed.
You and I have talked about that even. How many situations have we been in as young adults or even grown-ups where I'm like, that could have been really bad.
Exactly. We could have really gotten hurt in that situation. Find out about their friends.
And find out about their parents. Their friends' parents.
Especially their parents. Are they in line with what you're teaching your kids?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to, make sure that your kids know to be aware. And, at the end of the day, kids are kids and they're going to end up in situations that nobody wants their kid to be in. And unfortunately, it's a tragic case of friends that are actually wicked and evil. So that is our case for today, guys. We thank you for coming back. We are here every Saturday morning with a new episode. Also want to take the time to thank everyone who has sent me new cases this week. I have done a lot of deep digging and y'all have kept me busy. We want to thank you. Have a great weekend and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.